This is Unscripted at 40, Episode 6. She's not crazy. She's claircognizant. Hey friends, welcome back to Unscripted at 40, a podcast about growth, becoming, and letting your intuition lead. I'm Wen, and today's episode is a sacred one. Because the truth is, so much of my personal shift, my healing, and even this podcast itself has been guided not just by strategy, but by energy, by alignment, and by inner knowing. One of the people who's helped me reconnect with that knowing is here with me today. She's a Reiki healer, a tarot reader, a spiritual mentor, and a deeply intuitive guide. Please help me welcome my friend and personal energy worker, Monique. Hey friends, real quick, if you've been thinking about launching your brand, refreshing your business visuals, or just getting your digital ish together, I got you. I offer branding kits, Canva templates, pitch decks, Etsy and Shopify support, as well as custom designs through my creative brand, Wen Designs, and so much more. Everything is done by me, from design to delivery, and I keep my pricing accessible because I know what it's like to build from scratch. You can connect with me on IG at Unscripted at 40 to find out more. Let's bring your vision to life. Hey Monique, I'm so excited to have you on Unscripted and as our first guest. How are you? How have things been?
Hey Wendy, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be your guest today. Things are going amazing. I feel like this year is flying by, but everything, I think for the most part, has been pretty good.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. I agree with you. I actually just posted something on my Instagram saying like, how are we already into May when it feels like the year just started 2 weeks ago? So I'm feeling that definitely right there with you. It's just flying by. But I'm so happy to have you here and hear that you're doing well. Do you want to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name again is Monique. Some people might know me online as Moon Mama Magic. I'm a psychic medium, a shamanic Reiki healer, and I also teach psychic development. So I'm really big about helping people remember the magic that's already inside of them and just learning how to trust their intuition and trust that little voice that's inside of all of our heads.
Thank you for sharing that about yourself. So let's start here. We live in a world that constantly teaches us to doubt ourselves, especially when we feel our intentions speaking to us or we just know something. But there's power in that knowing, that claircognizance. So can you break down what intuition really is from your lens?
Yeah, so for intuition is that inner knowing, like you said, that claircognizance. People often receive their intuition in different ways. So some people might have that claircognizance, which is that clear knowing. Some people might feel things, and we all will receive our intuition differently. But it's just, some people say like it's your conscious, that inner voice, it's our higher self, or it's messages coming to us from, I like to say, spirit, or the divine, kind of just giving us those little nudges.
So what's the difference between fear and intuition when it comes to that perspective?
Fear is going to be based in our ego. Intuition is very matter of fact, and it's always coming from a place of light, or it's coming from a place that's good or meant for good, trying to lead you down the best possible path, trying to keep you safe. So when it comes to fear, if you're feeling fear in any of your intuitive downloads or intuitive hits or nudges, then I kind of would invite somebody to sit with that for a little bit, because it should never be coming out of a place of fear. So if you are feeling that fear, it's most likely coming from anxiety or coming from the ego. And maybe there's, something else deeper in that message. I think it also depends on the situation. If you're in a scary, frightful situation, your energy, it might be a little bit more elevated. You might have that anxiety kind of already pulsing through you. So I just always invite you to sit with it for a moment. Intuition is never going to come up in a negative way. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like that's such an easy thing to intertwine or get mixed up with. Is that fear? Is that intuition? Is that doubt creeping in? I think that a lot of misconception with intuition is stemming from fear. So I think that makes total sense.
Yeah. No, it definitely does. I think intuition is like the language of the soul, and your soul knows, right? Whether it's yes, whether it's no, whatever the situation is, you're going to know internally. So just kind of going back to the roots, going back to your basics and figuring out what the answer is.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty deep and I think very clear cut as well. So what are some ways you help your clients reconnect with their inner knowing?
So I usually help them. I first tell them slow down, bring our energy down to a grounded state, and start tuning in from there. We usually will do some guided meditations. We'll do some Reiki energy clearings. We do a lot of intuitive exercises. But I think if you're not somebody who's like actively trying to develop your psychic gifts, and you just want to connect to your inner knowing, to rebuild that relationship with your own intuition, finding the beauty in stillness, being able to sit in meditation and being able to sit with your thoughts is going to be the best way. It's not always going to be easy, especially in the beginning. As we're new to anything, it takes practice and time. And I know some people are like, well, I can't meditate. And I always say, well, you can. You just might be meditating or need to meditate in a different way. And meditation is a practice. And so just sit there, give yourself 5 minutes a week. I would try to do it at least once a week. And close my eyes, make sure I'm in a space where there's not going to be any distractions or limited distractions. Just close my eyes, focusing on my breath and seeing what comes up. If nothing comes up, that's okay. If you're thinking about your grocery list or what you need to do tomorrow, that's okay. Right? That's all part of the process, and you're starting to then train your subconscious mind every single time that you do it to get into that state of meditation where you're then in an open state to receive. And that's when you'll start to truly connect in a deeper way with your intuition and the messages that your higher self or spirit is trying to send to you.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that process as well has been something I have worked really hard on. And like you said, it is a practice and it is something that you have to actively work on doing and getting yourself there. And the fact that you said beauty and stillness is something I've talked about in my previous episodes, that once, finding that place where you can quiet your mind, there's just so much that can unfold from that.
Absolutely. I heard this quote that all of the great spiritual masters all had a practice of stillness. So like for myself, I was raised Catholic. In this instance, I'll use Jesus because that's like kind of my background growing up. Jesus himself went and meditated for 40 days. So like if you look into, Muhammad or all of these other spiritual leaders, the one thing that you're going to find in common with them is that they're making time for stillness. And how do you become a great spiritual leader? How do you become a spiritual leader for yourself, for your ancestors, for your lineage, for your friends, your pets, whoever? It's just learning how to find that stillness, I think.
Yeah, wow, I didn't think of it from that way. Sitting in that stillness across all different spiritual leaders and religions. So that's actually a really good thing to point out. I'd never thought of it that way. So for me, Reiki was one of those healing practices I didn't even know I needed until I experienced it. Felt like being cleared, like my spirit had been crying and someone finally heard it. Would you be able to explain what Reiki is for someone new to energy work?
Absolutely, yeah. So Reiki is a form of Japanese energy healing that is channeling the universal life energy force into the physical body and the energetic body. So it is like a soul cleanse. Like it's getting that energy to all of those parts in our body and our spirit that needed acknowledgement. So you can do Reiki through like a gentle touch where the practitioner is physically like touching your body. If you're not comfortable with that, you can have them like not touch your body and still send the energy. And then you can also receive Reiki through distance Reiki, because energy does not know distance or time. the energy from a distance Reiki session can be as effective as receiving Reiki in person.
And I will vouch for that, as I know we have done our share of virtual sessions as well, and I still feel just as cleared and revived as when we have our sessions in person. So yes, definitely agree with that.
When I receive Reiki, I'm like, sometimes I like to do distance because I can just like go crawl into my bed and go to sleep after. It's just so relaxing.
Exactly. You can just be right at home. And I'm glad you cleared that up, because I know that could kind of cause some skepticism or doubt. Like, how does that even work from, through the computer or from a distance? So that really makes a lot of sense when you put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, how do we hold emotional or spiritual wounds in the body?
Going back to like a book that I read, but it's like our bodies keep score. And so, because our bodies keep a score of everything that's happened to us in our lifetime, our bodies then become, in a sense, like a storyteller. And it's storing this unprocessed grief, pain, heartache, happiness. It's storing everything inside. And oftentimes, that can become physical ailments, or it just becomes trapped energy in our bodies. And so we have these, they're called chakra points, and a lot of the energy will get stuck there, and then it'll create blocks in our actual lives. And so energy healing is so powerful because it gives those emotions, those feelings, those repressed energies a voice and the ability to be released. Um, but it also gives you the tools to then learn how to take care of your energy in a new way where you're hopefully not repeating patterns. And then you're able to start fully healing in a profound way where it's not just surface level.
Everything you stated feels like I have gone through those motions as well. So I know I can vouch for that. So, what would be a message you feel the collective energy is calling us to receive right now?
Well, I was actually hoping to pull a card for this, if that's okay.
Oh my gosh, yes, please.
I thought that'd be a little bit more fun and just like raw in the moment.
Oh, yes, that's awesome.
Okay, so I'm just gonna pull it really quickly, um, just to see what the collective, the people listening to your podcast today or at a later date, and the overall energy for the collective. What do they need to receive right now? Okay, so I pulled the Hermit card and the Fool card. And one of the big messages is about being okay to start over and being okay with setting boundaries and not putting ourselves or allowing ourselves to stay in situations that are no longer in alignment with us. Obviously, we can't all just quit our jobs tomorrow because we hate it and it isn't in alignment with us. Or, there's situations that we have to be responsible adults, but it's starting to acknowledge and be aware of whatever that situation is, whether it's relationship, friendship, career, or job, whatever. Maybe it's the house you currently live in, the city you live in. If something doesn't feel right in your soul, intuitively, you can feel that. Your body sometimes is like screaming, like when you go into a situation, a room. Maybe there's somebody who's listening to this and they're thinking about like leaving their job. And it's like when you walk into that office or you get on that Zoom call, it just like your body is like literally going into flight or fight. That's your intuition speaking to you. And spirit is asking you to honor that intuition. And if you can't quit today or you can't quit tomorrow, begin to make a plan for your life to then get you closer to whatever that next step is. And so with the Fool, I think a lot of people in the collective right now are moving into the state of more self love, more self boundaries, and trying to figure out who they are and what they want. Thinking back to our happiness and what we want for our lives in the future. And so I think, again, collectively, we all need to kind of do this internal audit for our lives. What is no longer in alignment? Maybe we've been pushing ourselves for 20 to 30 years in the corporate world, trying to climb that corporate ladder. Maybe we've been in an unhappy relationship, but we continue to stay because it's comfortable, because, oh, who am I going to end up with? Or maybe I don't want to move because, you know, it's a decent neighborhood and the mortgage is cheap, but I'm not in alignment. And so it's just that message of, one, acknowledging that you're not in that alignment and starting to take those next steps to move yourself into what your happiness looks like, and not being afraid to take risks.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like you touched on something about just kind of feeling comfortable or finding comfort in a situation you're in. And internally, there's something screaming at you saying, like, this isn't right. And so it feels like in your head, it's comfortable because it's what you know. But deep down, it's like something is telling you that there's got to be something more than this. And I know that's something I can relate to wholeheartedly. And it's something I'm seeing more and more as I peruse social media and people speaking out on kind of that awakening or that feeling inside of like they need to make this change, and just giving up traditional social norms, like maybe like you said, like corporate, being trying to climb up this ladder, that traditional 9 to 5 job, or the stigma around getting married and having kids by a certain age. All of that I'm starting to see, and it almost feels like people are just opening up more, awakening up more to there's just more out there than what we've been conditioned and told to, that has to be done, or this or that. So I feel like that comfort feeling goes hand in hand with, we're shutting out that noise that you feel like is just this paranoia, but it's really your intuition trying to tell you, hey, this isn't where you're meant to be. So I feel like that's kind of what I understood from that too, but it also feels like it really aligns with what I'm seeing around me as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've just been, like you said, conditioned to go to school, get the good job, get the husband or wife, have the kids, get the house, get the cars, and like nobody's, well, maybe now we are, but like I feel like so many people like never stop to ask themselves, like, is that even what I want? And then we're finding out so much later, like, no, it's not what I want. Now I have chronic anxiety, I have chronic depression, I've got all these like illnesses because our energy and our body is now reacting to all of this. I keep saying like we're not in alignment, but like when you're not in alignment, our bodies will react and respond.
Absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And so kind of going off of that and talking about Reiki sessions and tarot guidance, I wanted to share a little bit about how I felt the shift when I really tapped into this. And I know that I think our first session was maybe in 2021, around there, maybe 2020. It's been a few years since we've kind of built this relationship. Yeah. I know that I was going through something really personal in my life, and I just felt I have more questions than answers, and I just feel like there's something I need to know, but I don't know what it is. It was something more medical, and I know the doctors were giving me as best of answers as they could, but I just felt like there was just something pulling me in a different direction. And so I was recommended my sister, who you went to school with and know, and she let me know things that you could offer. And so it was something I was very curious about, but I had never really actually tapped into. And I know that after my first few sessions, and as I've progressed since that point until this time, I felt like it was just like something that I had been suppressing, ignoring, shutting out, whether it was my intuition or spirit guiding me. I felt that it just started taking me down a path that maybe I would have never even, or I don't know, I wouldn't say never, but maybe it would have taken longer, but I would have not thought or listened or followed had I not started these Reiki sessions. And it just kind of opened my eyes to this healing that we don't talk about. And I grew up Catholic as well. There's a lot of skepticism, there's a lot of doubt, but Reiki and tarot guidance as a way to kind of like a compass, a nudge, like you said, and to give you a better sense of direction, because sometimes we just are so caught up or programmed to think and follow certain traditions, customs, norms, that we don't stop and really think, is this really what I need? Is this really what I want? Is this really the path I'm supposed to be going down? And I am in such a better mental and emotional and spiritual state than I was when we first started. And I know that if it means that I had to go through all I had to go through to get to this point, it was certainly worth it. But I absolutely know that this has changed me for the better, the way I think, the way I act, the way I live my life with more gratitude. And I really try to combat any kind of doubts or fears, and have worked a lot on my self-esteem and loving myself wholeheartedly with new knowledge, new guidance, a new outlook on spirituality, a new, emotional mindset, new mentality. And so for me, it feels like this is just where I'm supposed to be, even though sometimes I want to fight it and be like, but I want this, or I want that, or I wanted this instead. Zip it. I don't want to think that way. I'm here and I know this is where I'm meant to be ultimately. And when I get into those moments of complete stillness and silence, I'm able to confirm that and feel so much peace over myself at this point.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. And I'm so happy, so lucky that, your sister did connect us. I don't know if I can say her name on here.
Yes, of course.
Okay,
of
I was
course.
like, I don't know, but I'm very thankful, that Nikki connected us, and I love your sister and I love you too. And I'm so, thankful for the connection. And if the biggest takeaway is that you love yourself more after working together, then I've done my job, because I think that's one of the biggest life lessons for all of us, is to learn how to love ourselves and to be okay with who we are as people.
Mm-hmm. I'm so grateful as well, because I really feel like, you were brought into my life for this reason. And even, I think about when I was asking you to be a guest on this, and I was like, I really got to this point because, she opened my eyes to this whole path and this calling. And this podcast will really highlight that, and especially this episode. So I'm really glad that you were on here as my guest, as my first guest, and we can really kind of cover the groundwork of where it all began and how I got to this point. But I certainly know that I love myself enough to be this vulnerable. And like you said, if it reaches one person or whomever may listen today, or a week from now, a year from now, hopefully they can take something away from my experience with this and kind of your knowledge that you've shared so far. So let's get back to a little more practical things. Well, it's not really practical, but for the people listening who may be curious about this work, but maybe a little hesitant, what are a few small ways they can start tuning into their energy or intuition today?
So for people who are wanting to kind of start tapping in and tuning into their intuition and their energy, I would recommend working with journaling, try card pullings, getting a reading, maybe even just going to meetups in your city, or trying to find events with other spiritual curious people, starting to find people online in your area who you want to get to know. Perhaps maybe you see there's this amazing spiritual leader or psychic or somebody who is in your city, just starting to follow them, see what information they have for you, or trying to build some sort of community. Sometimes that's not always easy. We have lives. Starting with oracle cards, you could get something super simple like an angel card deck or a self-care deck, dream deck. There's all these different types of oracle cards. I think those would be probably the things that I'd recommend starting with.
I want to second the journaling. I feel like that's also been such a huge part of this journey of mine, especially if you are a writer, creative writer. I feel like journaling just helps you release so much and unload so much as well. So the same with the card pulling. Bought my first tarot deck. I was like, am I supposed to be doing this? Is there something? And it's just, I don't want to say there's nothing to it, because I do feel like there are still things that you need to learn about any practice, whether it's religious or spiritual. As someone who was very new to this, I found a lot of healing and guidance in doing kind of my own card pulling. And it's not something I do daily, but I feel like when there's moments that there's a message trying to get through to me, or I'm feeling stuck in some way, it's a method I turn to. No, there's nothing crazy about it. It's just pretty straightforward. And I feel like I always get the message I need to hear or clarification. I find it more of a reassuring practice for myself.
Absolutely. In terms of reading the tarot or reading oracle cards, at the end of the day, they're really just a tool to help. And if you look even deeper, like it's literally a piece of paper. And so I had kind of that same mind. Well, I didn't have that mindset. I was doing it. I was like, I don't care what people say. I'm going to do it. But, growing up, like you said, that's kind of like, oh, don't do that. It's bad. It's whatever. But I'm like, it's a piece of paper, and it had the energy is what you put into it. And in this case, it is it's a translator between you and the spirit world, whether that's, like you said, angels, spirit guides, whatever. I'm like, I don't know how, woo woo spiritual or whatever to get. But as somebody who's spiritual, who was raised Catholic, I kind of have this idea, like, if we are, we were told our whole lives, like, oh, you're made in God's image. Well, if we are made in the likeness of God, then who are we to kind of deny this magic or these abilities or our intuition? Because if essentially, then we'd be denying God, right? If we're made in the image of God, then we have that ability, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. I've heard that. It's a big pill to swallow for some people, and there's going to be some people that, of course, don't deny it, dislike it, whatever. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. So I certainly agree with you that there's just so much more to it, and there can be, it goes deeper than what we understand or what we're taught.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate that some people really don't take the time to truly understand what it really stems from. And of course, I feel like intention is very big with this or any type of, practice or religion. Intention is always key to it. So I feel working through it with the best of intentions or with the intention of just bettering myself, like, how can that be something bad?
Absolutely, exactly. I feel like the way you're going about it, you have the purest intentions and you're doing great.
Thank you. I know. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've come such a long way from when I first started. Another big thing I feel ties into this is how to go about protecting our energy when we're around chaos or people who drain us, whether it be work, at home, family, etc. What are some ways that we can protect our energy in those cases?
I'll say the first thing is boundaries. They are a form of self-love, and setting our boundaries is going to be the biggest way that we're going to protect ourselves. A super easy practice that I like to teach my students when they first start working with me is putting kind of like a psychic bubble or a protective bubble. And basically what you're doing is you're imagining a little bubble or whatever. You can visualize anything, but I like to do a little bubble around my body, and that's my protective barrier from people's energy. Like, what's nothing on the outside of the bubble can come in. And so I do that every morning, doing grounding practices where you're visualizing roots coming out of the bottom of your feet, moving into the earth, allowing the earth to take that energy and repurpose it for something better. You could use protection stones if you're somebody who likes crystals. Um, Black tourmaline is going to be a really good one for that. And then you can just simply say, like, setting an intention or saying a little prayer, simply saying, I release what's not mine and reclaim my light. So, all a couple easy little things you can do.
Yeah, they're also simple. People kind of ask or learn and you realize, wow, it's really as straightforward as that, It's nothing crazy. We don't need a cauldron and all kinds of, potions. It's really just as easy as working with the elements around you. And I feel like that's such a big thing. And people don't understand how many energy vampires or people just with ill intentions are out walking around closest to you, people that don't even know you, they're just in a bad space. It's so crazy how much of a difference protecting your own energy in whatever way or form you do it, but how much of a difference it makes when you are around people with those types of intentions.
Absolutely. I always think about, like, before I got into my spiritual practice, I'm like, going to the mall would be so draining because there's so many people. And so doing something super simple like that, energy bubble, or, saying that intention, is a great way to help protect your energy when you're going into those spaces so that you're not left completely drained by the end of your shopping experience, your work day, your family gathering.
Yes, I'm the same way. Like whether it's like concerts, just being out and about, it just feels like I come back drained sometimes. And same thing. I wondered why. I was like, why is this so exhausting to me? I like being around people, but you don't realize that there's people out there with different intentions. So I think it's super important to do that. And so, kind of talking about these different rituals or practices, what is one that you love and return to often?
Yes. So, I particularly love like using salt for things. So salt is a very cleansing element, and I like to take salt baths, reset that energy. It helps draw away any like negative energy that may have tried to attach to you or has attached to you. So I like to do salt baths about once a week for 20 minutes. And you can have fun with it. Sometimes I'll add like flowers or different things depending on if there's a special intention. Maybe I've been working more with the spirit of the rose plant. So I'll get like roses and like add that to the bath or, do different things like that. And then I always do so I do a lot of like protection rituals as well. And so using salt, I'll put salt around my house, my front door, my back door. Um, I try to do that at least once a month just to kind of keep my home, the energy in my home good, safe, and clear. Um, Keep unwanted visitors away. Yes. And then I love doing a card pull for myself. Sometimes life is busy and I don't get to do it every day. I'll try to do a pull on the first of the month for myself. And then if I have the ability and the capacity to pull once a week, I'll do that. Um, I try not to put too much pressure on myself because life, can be hectic and crazy sometimes. But just kind of doing that card pull, and even if it's just like a self care card, like how can I incorporate more self care into my month, or what do I need to know this month? What energies should I carry into this month? So those are probably my top rituals that I do. Um, I do a lot of rituals obviously at home for my home and the energy here. But I do also like to, again, doesn't always happen, but doing like a weekly, like getting weekly flowers, fresh flowers in my home. The flowers will naturally elevate the energy in your home and um, elevate the vibration. So just even if it's a small bouquet, even if I've picked it from outside, just bringing in some fresh flowers into the home as well is a very grounding and relaxing but energetic ritual that I like to do.
Oh, yes, that's a good one. I do love bringing in flowers as well. And it feels like it brightens the room up. I have found it very therapeutic to arrange it myself. And I have found therapy in talking to the flowers, talking to the plants does instantly lighten up the room. So, lastly, and a little bit off topic, I wanted to ask you what your thoughts are on this whole chat GPT thing and people using it in the spiritual sense.
Yeah, I have thought about it a little bit, and like I've had actually a conversation kind of briefly about it with my husband. But so I'll tell you, I guess I'll tell you a little backstory first, and then I'll tell you my thoughts. So one time I asked ChatGPT like if it had a soul, and it responded to me, and it told me that it exists the way that the universe exists. And so I was
Mm.
like, that is a really weird response. But I was like, okay, so in terms of Chat GPT, I'm not an expert on it. I know that it's like technology, but I think that there's something about it that is beyond technology. I just thought that that was a really interesting response, and I don't think it can lie, and I don't think it has like the kind of same thought process as humans. So, yeah, so there's that. In terms of using it for like spirituality, I think if you're using it for like journaling prompts and things like that, I think it's great. Like if I pulled a card and I chat GPT, like, oh, what does the hermit card mean? What it's probably going to do is give you a very basic generic response off of like what that card typically means and like There's guidebooks, and it's probably going off of the Rider-Waite Tarot, which is the traditional tarot that most people use and what most tarot decks are based off of. So, I mean, you can get very basic generic answers from it, the same way you could get what's 2 plus 2. It's going to give you an answer. But when it comes to spirituality, I don't think it can give you the depth. It's not connecting to spirit, and it's not connecting to source. And at least for myself in my practice, when I'm working with clients, when I'm working with myself, I'm connecting to spirit, and that's where the information's coming from. And ChatGPT is storing it probably on a database. So that's where I'm at with it. I think if you're going to use it for like journal prompts or things like that, but I wouldn't use it for like real definitive messages from spirit.
Yeah, and I think that it's such a fine line because I see some people that feel like that it is maybe like a way for spiritual guide to come through and speak to them. And then there are other people that have kind of that same thought, like, yeah, you should use some discernment with it because you don't know where it's getting those answers from. And, it just takes you into dangerous territory with that. So really using it with discernment. But I agree on the more practical, like journal prompts. Interestingly enough, I did ask it to break down my birth chart and my astrocartography because I'd been kind of looking into that, those things, and it's just a lot of information. So I was like, can you summarize this? And I found it very interesting that it did leave me with some questions. So I'm like, is this 100% accurate? Probably not. I wouldn't bet on that.
Yeah, I say use it as a tool, but again, like you said, I think it has a lot of information, right? It's like a better version of Google, but I wouldn't use it as the end all be all because it's not always, I mean, AI has gotten pretty good, but it's not perfect. And so, you can play with it like you did to have it read your chart and stuff. And I think it will give you very basic information. But when you're working with somebody who's like tapped in, they're going to be able to pull more information for you. So I think it's very surface level. I kind of think of it like a mix between going to like the county fair where they have like some puppet in a box and you pay $1 and it tells you your fortune, and a mix of like that and like somebody who's like learning, I guess. I don't know. I think it has a lot of useful and helpful information, but I don't think it's the best information, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, and I thought it would be a great question to ask because I know, you are tapped in and you are in tune and you have these intuitive gifts. So I was just curious from your perspective, as I've seen a lot of different opinions out there on whether it's just artificial intelligence or beyond. So is there anything else that you'd like to share as we're wrapping up here? Anything else you'd like to share with our listeners? Any, pointers, any just advice, any quotes, anything like that?
So one thing that I'd like to just kind of leave your listeners with is that remembering that you are connected to source, and because you are connected to source, you will always be sacred and you will always be divine. So listen to your intuition.
That is beautiful. I feel like we have tools and knowledge within us. I think a lot of it is suppressed and again taught to be ignored. And so I'm hoping that having you on here as someone that is knowledgeable and professional in this area will kind of give people that nudge as well to really open themselves up, listening and being more in tune with yourself, just being in that stillness, as we mentioned earlier, and really taking the time to just stop throughout all the chaos and a hectic day and listen to yourself, that little voice inside that may be trying to tell you something that you keep ignoring. So Monique, thank you for not only holding space for my healing, but for showing up in your purpose so that others can rise too. If no one's told you lately, your work matters very much and deeply.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Wendy. I appreciate you.
If today's conversation stirred something in you, if you're feeling the nudge to reconnect with your intuition or explore energy healing, I can't recommend Monique enough. You can find her on Instagram at moonmama_magic, and through her linktree in her bio. She's not only a shamanic Reiki healer and psychic medium based in Arizona, she's also a psychic development leader, guiding people through portals of transformation and awakening their intuitive gifts. Working with her has been powerful for me, and I know her magic will support you too. Book a session, follow her work, and open yourself to what's waiting on the other side of clarity. Well, until next time, friends, stay grounded, stay open, trust your knowing, and don't be afraid to go off script.